digging deeper into the conversations, trends, and ideas impacting Manhattan and the Flint Hills. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Cowboy hats, cowboy boots, big shiny belt buckles, not an unusual sight in Manhattan, Kansas, but you are likely to see more of them over the next few days in our community. Cattle ranchers and those with an interest in getting steaks and pot roasts in your freezer, on your grill, and slow cooking in your crock pot are gathering for the Kansas Livestock Association Convention at the Manhattan Conference Center. It begins later today. Our guests today are Philip Weltmer and Scarlett Madinger. They are leaders in their organization. They live the life. They come by it naturally. We'll talk about what it's like to raise cattle in Kansas today, the economics, the culture, the hardships, and the joy. The title sponsors of Within Reason are Stormont Vale Health, McCown Gordon Construction, and the Trust Company. We are live on terrestrial radio, News Radio KMAN, 1350 AM, 93.3 and 93.7 FM. We're live streaming on YouTube. Go there and search News Radio KMAN to see our shining faces and bright smiles. And we're recording Within Reason for posting as a podcast on the KMAN website and elsewhere where you can find podcasts. Two leaders in the Kansas animal agriculture industry are with us today. They are Philip Weltmer. He is a Smith County cattle rancher, and Scarlett Madinger, who manages communications on the professional staff of the Kansas Livestock Association. Welcome to Within Reason.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
First thing we do with all our guests is to ask them to kind of give us a bio. Phil, let's start with you. Tell us about Philip Weltmer.
I'm Philip Weltmer. As he said, I'm from Smith Center, Kansas, so I'm about 2 hours and 30 minutes northwest of Manhattan. I'm a graduate of Kansas State University in animal science. Then we returned home to our family operation. I'm serving this year as KLA's president, and so that's my day-to-day job is on the farm, but I kind of run around the state, meeting with our members and working with the staff to make sure that the association is taking care of our membership needs. And so it's been rewarding, but on the farm side of it at home, we have a cow-calf operation, registered Angus, and then commercial, as well as a small feed yard where we finish out our own raised cattle and purchase some over the years. And so that kind of keeps my day-to-day. And then we have a row crop, corn, soybeans, and wheat that we raise. So that kind of, I've got three kids that are bouncing around. One's a freshman this year at K-State, and then two still in high school, so we got a lot of games and activities.
It sounds like several full-time jobs. Yeah, absolutely. Scarlett, give us your story.
Sure. So I started with KLA nearly 24 years ago, and I, like you said, manage the communications department there. So we do basically every piece of communication you can think of, from magazine to newsletter to radio to TV. I actually grew up in Texas, but again, I've been here 24 years, so probably consider myself a Kansan just as much. So just happy to be working for KLA and our members.
Scarlett Madinger is manager of communications for Kansas Livestock Association. Philip Weltmer is a cattle rancher from Smith County. Phil, was there ever any doubt that this was what you would do with your life?
As a president of KLA, no. I never thought of that, but but the cattle ranching, I've known that since I was little. That I always wanted to do it. So, this is the uncomfortable part of my career, being on, doing the public stuff with KLA. But I've always enjoyed just getting my hands dirty, working outside, watching the animals be born, watching them grow, watching the crops grow. That's what I enjoy, being outside. I wouldn't handle being in an office every day type deal. I like to be out and a little bit of different every day.
It is an industry that demands sort of time, right? I mean,
yes.
And it's also clearly one where probably unlike many other industries, it's family driven. And we'll get into that as we move on and some of the changes that are involved with that. But let's just talk a little bit about the economics of the livestock industry and the cattle industry in Kansas. I mean, it's no secret, or maybe it is the best kept secret, that the livestock industry in this state is a significant economic driver. Fair?
Absolutely. Some people may or may not know that there are twice as many cattle in the state that there are people. And which is, I always find an interesting fact. We have cattle born and raised here. We have cattle shipped in here to feed out at our feed yards across the state. And I mean, this industry raises over $9 billion in cash receipts each year. So it's a big economic driver for the state.
Phil, I'm not going to assume that our listeners are fluent on some of the words that are used in your industry. So give us a sense, help us to understand what is cow-calf, what is backgrounding, and what is finishing.
Well, the cow-calf operation, those guys typically, they'll have the mama cow that raises the baby. That's primarily their avenue of their production. Most producers in our state that are cow-calf, the average cow herd is going to be under 40 cows. So the number of cow-calf producers out there's a lot of them. And so then you've got your backgrounders. A lot of the guys, what you'd classify backgrounders, we have some of the best grazing land in the world sitting right out of Manhattan's door,
right,
with the Flint Hills. There's a lot of cattle that come up. A lot of those guys will background them for 60 days and then kick them out on the Flint Hills grass and run them for however long the grass can stand. Then move them on to the finishers. And so the finisher guys, there'll be a feed yard. They're all over the state of Kansas. Primarily, our majority of feed yards would be out in southwest Kansas, near our processing plants, where closer to supplies. So
the feed yards, I mean, that is what you just described, right? The basic economic components of how money is earned in the industry. That has evolved as the industry has evolved, right? The feed yards tend to be more efficient. Is that fair in terms of how you actually get the meat out?
Very, very much so. Efficiency, I don't want to talk bad on any part of the industry. There's grass finished, there's grain finished, there's different aspects, and each of them have their own time period of how long it takes to finish them, and it's a matter of preference for our consumer. And so, whatever preference they want to purchase when it comes to store, that's an option for them. And but efficiency-wise, we can most efficient manner of finishing that animal is on grain. Limits the water, the feed it takes during that period of time to get to the same finished weight.
The livestock industry, not unlike any other industry in our country, in that it is consumer driven. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we come back after this break. Our guests today are on Within Reason are Philip Weltmer. He is a Smith County cattle rancher and the president of the Kansas Livestock Association, and Scarlett Madinger. She manages communications for the organization. Their convention starts today in Manhattan, so stay with us. We'll return.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Looking for pest control you can trust? Choose Plunkett's Pest Control. Proudly family-owned and serving local communities for over 100 years. Their expert technicians live where they work, ensuring personal, reliable service. From ants to rodents, their team will assess underlying issues, recommending and implementing preventative measures before considering chemical treatment. See for yourself why homeowners and businesses rely on Plunkett's Pest Control, keeping pests in their place, not yours. Visit plunketts.net today.
Stormont-Vail Health is your go-to for exceptional care right in your own neighborhood.
The Flint Hills campus in Junction City is open 24/7 with a full-service hospital and rural health clinic. You'll find primary care and advanced lab services at our Wamego clinic to keep your family healthy without the drive. Our Manhattan campus offers a wide range of primary and specialty providers, plus imaging and lab services, and a pick-me-up at Radina's inside our campus. Visit StormontVale.org.
Stormont-Vail Health. High-quality care closer to home.
This holiday season, we asked folks to describe the Jingle Bell Rock with only one word.
Electric.
Adventure.
Magical. Intriguing.
Wonderful.
Mysterious.
Exciting.
Treasure.
Invigorating.
Electric.
Adventure.
Magical. Intriguing.
Wonderful.
Mysterious.
Exciting.
Treasure.
Invigorating.
Electric.
Adventure.
Magical.
Wonderful.
Exciting.
Mysterious.
Invigorating.
Wonderful.
Exciting. Invigorating.
Electric.
Magical.
Wonderful.
Exciting. Invigorating.
And you can tell us the word you'd use when you find the Jingle Bell Rock.
It's almost time for the biggest, brightest, merriest event of the year. The hunt for the G. Thomas Jewelers, Godfrey's Ranges, and Tactical Supply Hy-Vee Jingle Bell Rock is about to begin. Celebrate the season with the longest-running Shop Local campaign for a shot at bragging rights, glory, and thousands of dollars in cash and prizes. Clues start Monday, December 2nd. This could be the year you find the G. Thomas Jewelers, Godfrey's Ranges, and Tactical Supply Hy-Vee Jingle Bell Rock. The hunt for the G. Thomas Jewelers, Godfrey's Ranges, and Tactical Supply Hy-Vee Jingle Bell Rock is about to begin. Thousands in cash and prizes are at stake. Win even more if you have a Jingle Bell Rock hunting tag. And this year, you can get multiple hunting tags for your chance at weekly prizes. The more hunting tags you have, the more your chances of winning each week. Plus, if you find the rock, your cash prize will double. Pick up your limited edition hunting tag this Wednesday at M&S Plumbing, Heating, and Air from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Goblin Games from 4 to 6.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their housing, house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio, KMAN. KMAN's Morning News. Tomorrow morning, 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Our guest, Sir Philip Weltmer, he is the president of the Kansas Livestock Association. He's a cattle rancher, multi-generational cattle rancher from Smith County. And Scarlett Madinger, she manages communications for the trade group. Their convention starts today in Manhattan. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the show, how they came to land on our community as the site for their convention. A lot of folks are going to be in town. Before the break, guys, we were talking a little bit about just the consumer-driven aspect of your business, right? And my assumption would be, based on my own experience, that has probably changed in the last generation or so. There's a much more concern these days about how animals are treated in terms of what consumers think. That's before you even get to whether you want your steak medium or medium rare. So Phil, talk to us a little bit about how the consumer drives the industry.
The consumer is, they're the driving force of how we raise our animals, and the fact that if they're not willing to purchase it, we have no ability to market those animals to it, and very much so they've kept our industry alive over the last few years, where we are of record droughts across not only Kansas but across all the Midwest, and that's where a majority of the cattle is raised. And so, we are at record low cow herd numbers, I'll put it that way. And so supply and demand tells you we have less on the market. The price is going to be higher at the grocery store. We understand that, it's not as easy to feed your kids or your family on a just your monthly check that you have. You have to have that responsibility in that to those consumers, that you're providing something that is worth that value, and then also it needs to make sure that you're at least filling the needs and answering the questions, and more than feeling like we're getting told what they want. We answer the questions, explain why we're doing it. Why do we feed our animals this way? Why do we give them vaccines? Why do we do antibiotics when they are sick? Just like you and I go to the doctor. Some animals will be treated with antibiotics. It's my husbandry duty to take care of that animal. If it's sick, I work with my vet. We'll give it antibiotics. I think sometimes there's the consumer out there, I don't want anything with antibiotics in it. Well, I go to the doctor when I'm really sick too, and it's not fair to my animals that I can't give them an antibiotic. As long as I'm doing it, doing my duty, that following the labels, working with my vet, that I think there's that common ground that, we get that negative feedback, and once we explain, we do it this way for a reason, and we have a vet or a doctor, that helps work through those processes, and then they better understand it. But I think we're getting farther and farther away from the farm, but our consumer still has that desire or that pull that the Western way of life a pull that they grab and gravitate to, but I think it's one of those issues that we have to work together.
Sure.
Because we rely on their consumer dollars to help fund what we're doing.
You bet. Phil Weltmer is a cattle rancher from Smith County. He's president of the Kansas Livestock Association. Scarlett Madinger is director of communications for the trade group as well. Their convention starts today in Manhattan. Scarlett, we're talking a little bit about the consumer-driven aspect of the industry. Has it changed? Do people want as much steak and cheeseburgers today as they did a generation ago?
Oh, I think so. I think consumer demand for our product is high, and we're thankful for that. We're thankful that we have the consumers out there that still demand our product at the rate that they do. They enjoy a steak. They enjoy a burger. The U.S. consumes a great amount of hamburger, of beef, and we are thankful for that. We're thankful that they continue to desire that. But like Philip said, our producers really work to provide what they want, and if they're what they're looking for, and just like everybody, consumer desires change, and they do want more information, but they still want that good beef product, and so our producers try to provide that.
And clearly that's the role of the trade organization. You guys are gathering this week in Manhattan as an organization, and so that's the one thing that the trade group can do to help move those conversations forward?
Absolutely. That's one of our jobs as a professional staff for our members, is to be that gateway, if you will, to consumers, to help them understand what our producers do on their farm and ranch. They want to know, they want to hear from ranchers, and so we try to provide that avenue so that they can connect on that level.
This is Within Reason. You're listening to us on News Radio KMAN. Our guests are Scarlett Madinger and Philip Weltmer with the Kansas Livestock Association. Philip is a multi-generational cattle rancher from Smith County. Philip, you touched on this earlier just with respect to the way of life involved with cattle ranching. It's no secret that Kansas is becoming more urban and suburban and less rural. Does that bring some dangers for your culture, your way of life?
I don't necessarily dangers. I think the concern I kind of addressed is the lack of understanding in just where our food comes from, what the process is. I think there's that avenue that we have open that we need to tell our story, those that are out there as producers. But I think the biggest avenue we have is our way of life and how we raise our livestock, how we raise our crops out in the western part of our state. There's a disconnect between this. You get east of Manhattan, the city. It's even the producers are like, well, I just don't understand. I don't want to live there. It's too busy. There's still that same. We don't maybe understand some of the city life,
Sure.
And I think that common ground that we have to work together. But I think our Western way of life is hurt. I think the lack of getting those young. Minds back,
Sure.
That pull to go to the city to get a high-paying job when it's a lot of hard work. It can be profitable. You can make a life out of it, but it's hard work. I mean, you get up and it's not a 8 to 5 job as well.
And it also probably unlike most industries. I was thinking, we were talking about this the other day with someone who's involved in the industry, and they said there's really no other industry in this country, maybe maritime fishing in the Northeast, that is family driven. Right, that you mentioned it at the top of the show, Philip. You never thought you were going to do anything other than what you're doing. Right, you were going to come back and raise cattle because that's what your father did. That's what your grandparents did. Is that still alive?
Oh, I think very much so. I mean, part of my final speech on Friday, it's talking about the traditions that we passed down, whether it was traditions of hard work,
Yep.
faith, and family. And that's probably the backbone of all of, the Western theories of, how, growing up, they didn't know anything different other than hard work, but they loved their family and they loved their faith, and that kept them going. And I think that's always been passed down. I think there's an attack on that, and I think sometimes I always tell my kids, I have the right to believe a certain way, but you have the same right to have that belief, but we have to have that common ability to have open discussion.
Philip Weltmer I appreciate that. Philip Weltmer is president of the Kansas Livestock Association. He is a Smith County rancher, and he's joined today by Scarlett Madinger, who is the director of communications for KLA. Their convention starts today in Manhattan. Scarlett, let's talk just a little bit about this notion of how you go about your work and how that changes in terms of these dynamics that we are talking about. There was a time when I suspect you could preach to the choir and take the rest of the day off. No longer, I suspect.
No, that's correct. We have to be more vocal about this industry, about what goes on at the ranches and the feed yards, and to share that with consumers. Just like Philip said, they're getting further and further removed from the ranch. 50 years ago, your grandparents might have owned a farm or a ranch, but that's not really the case today. And so people really need to know more about how their food is raised, and they're interested in that. And so that's the purpose we serve as a staff, is to try to share that and also try to put our members in a position where they can communicate with those consumers and share what they do, because that's who they really want to hear from.
Sure. And I would suspect it's one of those things where people don't know what they don't know. Right? And when they don't know what they don't know, they sometimes will draw conclusions about that, and that tends to be part of the challenge that you face. Fair, Phil?
Very much so.
Okay. And clearly that goes into how you design, how you communicate all this stuff.
That's exactly right. And there's so many communications platforms today, so many more than even when I started 20 years ago, and you have to figure out how to communicate on each one of those, whether it is radio or TV or social media plays a big role in it now. That's where a lot of people go to get their information. And so we want it to be the accurate information.
Earlier in my career, I had the opportunity to work for a leadership development outfit that was based in Wichita. And at the time, their headquarters was based in what used to be the Occidental Hotel at 2nd and Main in Wichita, which was one of the very first structures built in that cow town. Right? It was built for the Texas cattle trade folks that would come up and make the deals and move the cattle on. And what I remember about that significantly was there was a restaurateur who wanted to put a vegan restaurant in the middle of that hotel. And he did, and it was successful. And I remember going there. I'm not a vegetarian, so I didn't. But I wanted to visit with him just to talk to him about his market analysis. And he basically was saying, I can make money selling vegan food in Wichita. And I asked him, are you familiar with the history of this building? And he wasn't. But I guess I offer that as sort of maybe illustrative of some of the challenges you're facing. Is that a fair sort of assessment, Phil?
Very much so. There's the food and nutrition aspect of we've got to make sure that our product is meeting the needs of the nutritional values that our consumers are needing, whether it's infants to the elderly. And I'm actually on the Nutrition and Health Committee for the checkoff. And so that's I chair that committee, and it's one of our main goals the last 20 years was to make sure we had research done by university research that would be done for nutritional value, so that we can lay that out and show the benefits or negatives.
Yeah.
And so just that way they have that opportunity to have a better understanding of what nutritional values they're getting from eating that 3 ounces of meat and having it a part of a balanced diet, and that we've been able to show that we have 29 cuts that's the American Heart Institute, mark that they were lean cuts of beef that you can put in a daily meal plan and feel like you're getting those needs and nutritional desires met, and it helps fill you up.
Our guests are Phil Weltmer. He is a cattle rancher from Smith County and president of the Kansas Livestock Association, and Scarlett Madinger, who manages communications for the group. Their convention starts today in Manhattan and will carry on through the end of the week. Phil, you'd mentioned the checkoff. I'll make an assumption that people, I know what the beef checkoff is, I think, but I may not know. So help us understand what the beef checkoff is and what it has brought to the industry.
It started in 1985, and background-wise, we owned a family livestock market in Smith Center, so we were an initial collection point. You sell your animal. Each producer, it's $1 comes out per animal that sells, and that is then into all the money collected across the country. And then the checkoff was designed for producer education, producer the nutrition work to find that research, working whether it was in Kansas, the dollars went to Kansas State University, to Dr. Marsden at the time, to develop a proper way of working with the meat.
You bet.
Making sure it stays, that we don't have the E. coli outbreaks. You see all this, and we got meat that was contaminated with E. coli recently. Again, they said, but it came from another source than the meat. But it's in the news, and everybody gets worried, right?
Right.
So what we're doing our due diligence, and if we weren't willing to fight for ourselves, who's going to fight for us to make sure that we all in the country feel that our product is top notch, it's quality, and we want our consumers to have that same confidence.
And that checkoff allows the industry then to do the kinds of things that you guys have been talking about for the last half hour in terms of helping consumers understand what's going on. Fair?
Correct.
Our guest is Philip Weltmer. He is the president of the Kansas Livestock Association. He is a cattle rancher from Smith County. Is also a K-State grad. Welcome back to Manhattan. Scarlett Madinger is the director of communications for the Kansas Livestock Association. They will begin their convention later today here in Manhattan. We will take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some of the policy issues they will be dealing with, that people are talking about related to the cattle industry, and we'll talk about the convention and what brought them to our community. Stay with us. This is Within Reason on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
November is here, and that means Military Month at Midwest Dream Car Collection. Visit now and explore the rare loaned special display of historic military vehicles and uniforms through the end of November. In recognition of our local heroes, veterans, and active service members, they receive free museum admission all month long. For more information on MDCC Military Month, visit MidwestDreamCarCollection.org. Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Dollars spent locally today help build a better community for tomorrow.
Connect to anywhere in the world with 5 daily flights to Dallas and Chicago when you fly local with Manhattan Regional Airport. You'll spend less time driving, saving you gas and time. And more importantly, you'll get home quicker to the ones you love. Click your next flight at flymhk.com.
Midwest Ace, around the block with what you need in stock with people who know how to help. Shop in-store or online for whatever your home or your yard needs. Choose from top brands like Milwaukee, Stihl, Traeger, and Benjamin Moore. Ace is the place with the helpful hardware folks.
Just because it's colder doesn't mean you don't need some Baskin-Robbins. Nothing makes you feel better than a scoop cake or shake from Baskin-Robbins. Peppermint and eggnog have hit the cabinet. Come get some now at Baskin-Robbins. Don't forget our selection of holiday cakes as well. Baskin-Robbins, a Streeter family business. Our family serving yours.
Manhattan Broadcasting is keeping it local. Find more great local businesses plus special deals and offers when you keep it local on our website.
This is Tori Berard, and I'm the bank manager at ESB Financial. We're a local community bank, and our vision is to help our clients achieve their dreams. So what's your dream? Is it to own a home in the Manhattan community? Do you want to open your own business? Or are you working on building your savings account for a dream vacation? Whatever it may be, we want to help. Come see us at ESB Financial and find out how our unbeatable products and customer service can help you achieve your dream. Member FDIC.
Eagle Housing Lender.
All the way to the goal in the throwdown.
Man.
He's open for three. Yes! Yes!
A Wildcat.
3 seconds to go. Scoop shot. Yes! At the buzzer.
Be a part of the Wildcat voyage right here.
Now goes back in. There's the lob and the throwdown.
On your home for Kansas State Wildcat basketball. The Cats play here. 1350 AM, 93.3 and 93.7 FM. This is News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our guests are Philip Weltmer. He is a cattle rancher from Smith County, and Scarlett Madinger. She manages communications. Both are involved in the organization known as the Kansas Livestock Association. They are gathered in Manhattan and are gathering, actually as we speak, because your convention starts later today and runs through Friday. Scarlett, let's talk a little bit about that convention to begin with, just the logistics of that. This is your first year in Manhattan.
It is. We have been in Wichita, actually, Wichita, this is our 112th convention, and Wichita has hosted 102 of them. So back in our very early days of KLA, There were a couple in Topeka and Hutch and Salina, but we haven't been out of Wichita since 1950.
So help us understand the conversation and just sort of the decision making that went through the decision to bring you here to our community.
Sure. So the first thing we have to consider as a staff is who can hold us, right? You know, what kind of facility because we have 5,600 members, and usually at least 800 to 900 of them come to wherever we are. And so we have to figure out who can hold us. We try to keep it somewhat central, if you will, so not everybody has to drive all the way across the state either way. And so, of course, Manhattan has this great facility, and they were the first place we looked if we were going to go outside of Wichita. And thankfully, it worked out, and it's been really great working with the staff and the conference center there. And so we're looking forward to a successful convention.
I know the leaders involved with the conference center recently, the last 2 or 3 years, made a decision to make it even bigger, right? To make that biggest ballroom bigger to allow for groups just such as yours. So I guess you guys are testament to that decision.
Yeah, for sure.
Phil, help us understand a little bit about how you think about that, right? You're a K-Stater, right? And I'll just make an assumption that there's a lot of K-Staters in KLA. I hope they're excited about coming back home.
I think you can tell just by our registration, the 10-day out registration, we had more than doubled what we had in the last couple of years in Wichita. It's no surprise to me that with the amount of alumni that we have through Kansas State, but we're going to have a home football game Saturday. There's home basketball, men's basketball game, I think, women's game again this week. Volleyball's in town, and I think a lot of people are like, we're going to make a weekend of it, and they're going to be here. And a lot of them already have season tickets. They come in, they have a place that they always stay at anyways, and they're just going to make a weekend of it. But I know when we announced last year that we were coming to Manhattan, I happened to sit with some of the leadership from K-State, and they were beyond excited. And I think it's a great partnership with the university, with the College of Ag. I know that Dr. Ernie Mitten was way excited about the opportunity for us to interact with the students as well as the faculty to kind of work with us. And we use some of the speakers that'll come in on Thursday. They'll talk. Sometimes we use some of the professors to come in and talk about topics. And so it makes it really easy for them now this year to stop over if they have time in between classes. It's versus running to Manhattan or from Manhattan down to Wichita. It's not as convenient. And always the highlight is the ice cream from Call Hall, and I remember Dr. Nichols would try to get it down there without melting, and he'd get it all hauled down there. Now we don't have to go to quite make that deal, but we always serve Call Hall ice cream, and that's always a hit. And so I think being in Manhattan, there's a big tie to Manhattan and to the campus. So
the last 2 minutes of Phil's conversation should be a commercial for the Manhattan Convention and Visitors Bureau in terms of what they are trying to do to bring groups like yours to Manhattan, because you said it all, right? And then that's a huge part of that. And I know the CVB is excited about having you here. You're probably one of the biggest groups that they're going to have throughout the year. I know Farm Bureau comes as well, and you guys are comparable, but it's a significant component. And we're glad on behalf of the community that you made that decision. You meet for a reason, right? So you guys convene annually, and you have some business to do. Scarlett, what do you have to do at your convention?
So the biggest thing that we have to do at our convention is establish policy that will guide our staff and our volunteer leaders throughout the next year. And so there will be several committee meetings and council meetings where issues will be discussed, current policy will be reviewed, possibly new policy introduced, and then on our Friday morning, it all culminates at our membership meeting, and that policy gets passed or voted on. And that is the biggest goal of our convention is to make sure that we have a strong policy in place so that our staff and leaders can move forward throughout the year.
And help us understand what happens once that organizational policy is adopted. Where do those words go, and what do you guys do with them?
Sure. Well, that goes into our official policy, and then the staff takes that, and we have lobbyists on staff that are in the Capitol when Topeka legislature is in session. They are in there every single day that the legislature is there, making sure that our policy is withheld, and if there are any bills that go against that or go for it, then we work with legislators to make sure that it stands up to what our policy is.
Well, and the legislature and Congress is a reflection of the country as well, and it goes to some of the dynamics we were talking about earlier. The legislature is now there's a majority in the legislature that represents cities and suburbs, and rural areas are no longer have those numbers, and so that just sort of drives home, Phil, the importance of this policy work that you guys need to be involved with.
Very much so, and as of right now, we have 72 policy resolutions that are walking orders, of different issues. But I think you just mentioned it. Even in Topeka, there's a large number of whether it's in the House or in the Senate, that they don't have the knowledge of the issues in agriculture and how it affects us, and it allows our lobbying staff to walk into there and kind of answer those questions. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm proud of as a KLA member, they always say, we really appreciate talking to your lobbyists. They'll answer your questions. They don't tell us, that you have to do this, you have to vote a certain way. They tell us what it is, why it affects our producers, and sometimes we have to, critical issues that we want to take a stance on. Sometimes we may not have policy, but we'll answer a question, and it allows our membership to have a say in what we continue to do by meeting today and through Friday, and so it's a good process.
Sometimes, in my experience, sometimes the bills that don't become law, you work harder at making those bad ideas, preventing them from becoming law, and that oftentimes doesn't make the newspapers, but that's a significant part of your work too. Let's talk a little bit about some of the policy issues that have been in the news as a result of the elections and what people are talking about with respect to your industry. Again, we're visiting with Scarlett Madinger. She's the Manager of Communications for Kansas Livestock Association, and Philip Weltmer. He is a multi-generational cattle rancher from Smith County and president of KLA. Their convention begins next week. Phil, we hear a lot since President-elect Donald Trump has been elected about this notion of tariffs and what that might mean for the agricultural community. Do you have a sense now, and I'm confident those conversations are underway within your industry, what's your gut tell you?
We've went through that in his first term. I think that there are a real possibility that there will be some tariffs that occur, but I think there's a different dynamics financially with the dollar value of our product versus some of our competing countries that we put tariffs on in the past to try to make them stand up and purchase our product. I think it's a dynamics, and as we talked a little bit earlier, if I knew the answer of what exactly he was going to do, I would not be in this room, and I'd be a lot somewhere else, Yeah. But I think there is that possibility, but it's still an unknown of.
Sure.
And I hate to be the one. I don't want to feel like I'm living in fear all the time. Oh, it could be bad.
Right.
It could be good. We don't know what direction is. Will there be tariffs? I'm sure there'll be some sort of tariffs that come down. And at this point in time, it's hard to even speculate, like how it's going to affect our markets, because we don't even know what tariffs might be put on. And
true. But clearly, it's a conversation that you need to be aware of, and then
correct.
Clearly you're talking about, because your worst case could lead to fewer exports, right?
Correct.
Your products could not be exported at the level that they are now, and that's why the trade group exists. Fair enough. All right, let's talk a little bit about President-elect Trump's immigration policy, right? There is a significant component of the workforce, especially in feed yards in Kansas, that rely on immigrant labor. So help us understand what those dynamics are and what might be at risk.
Probably our number one issue that comes up, and it's not just Western Kansas with the ag, is the lack of labor. And I think statewide, that is a number one issue that we need mechanics. We need daily farm labor. We need manufacturing labor. There's a desire for labor. That is a source. I think our membership has always said that we are not against the immigrant K2 visas or whatever.
Yep.
If as long as it's done right, and through a process where we can make it feasible for ag work and allow them to come in and to work, I think it gets really, the issues get really blurred about how we start to handle it. And I think that conversation has to happen, that we have a working deal. And I think we are a country of immigrants. But I think it's important to understand they came over a legal way, and they've grown and built. And there's families that came from Mexico that I know in the last 15 years, they came the right way. They filed the paperwork. They are as proud of American as there is. But I think we have to have that ability to bring those workers in, and if our industry doesn't have them, we're not going to be able to properly function on a day-to-day basis. And so we have to have a way to have a legal form of immigrant workers, whether it's day workers,
sure.
or on a visa program where they can come in and work, and they are very educated, very hardworking, and I think that is the biggest goal, is to find a workable ag through, at least with our organization, to fill our needs in the ag industry for day-to-day labor.
Philip Weltmer is president of the Kansas Livestock Association. He's a cattle rancher from Smith County. He's joined by Scarlett Madinger, who is the director of communications for the trade group. KLA is holding their convention in Manhattan. They are in our community for the first time after several years in Wichita. I suspect, Scarlett, it doesn't take long for these policy issues to get somewhat heated. Do you have disagreements among your delegates?
Oh, for sure we do. When you get 800 people in a room, you're not going to have all the same opinions. But I think that's the beautiful thing about our convention is it brings them together. It allows them to have those discussions. They hear each other out, and then they come to an agreement on what the policy should be.
Which is sort of the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
If you were to design it, that's the way you would want it to work.
Right.
We are talking with Scarlett Madinger and with Philip Weltmer. They're both leaders in the Kansas Livestock Association. Their convention starts today in Manhattan. We've got one more break, which we'll take now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more just about the culture of KLA and the organization and what it means to the Kansas economy. Stay with us. We are live on News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
At Stormontville Health, our patients are our neighbors and our communities our home.
We invest in your health and our community by bringing high-quality healthcare closer to home. From our Wamego Clinic to our new campus in Manhattan and the Flint Hills Hospital in Junction City. Our partnerships with organizations like the Mayo Clinic and the Children's Miracle Network bring top-notch expertise to our region. We take pride in local collaboration to stay connected to our communities. Visit stormontvale.org.
Stormontville Health, high-quality care closer to home.
Thinking about the future isn't always easy, but with the attorneys at Adair Law, planning your estates can be. We understand the importance of protecting what matters most, your family and your legacy. Don't wait for tomorrow. Secure your peace of mind today. Protecting clients with compassion is what they do. Call Adair Law at 785-776-2000 to schedule your consultation today.
Lemunion Dry Out and Foundation Repair, when the big surprises strike your home.
Mr. Ed here with Lemunion Dry Out and Foundation Repair. Does your basement feel damp or have a bad odor? Or maybe it's wet all the time. You'd like to finish that space, but you're afraid to. Are your foundation walls cracked or bowed? Maybe your foundation is sinking or settling. Are your doors and windows difficult to open? Do you notice cracks in your block or brick exterior? For peace of mind and permanent solutions to foundation problems and basement or crawl space waterproofing, visit us at lemunion.com. That's LAMUNYON.com today, or call 800-528-5535 and schedule a free consultation. Not a sales pitch. Ask about our fantastic 25-year transferable warranty.
Leave it to Lemunion when the big surprises strike your home.
The secret to getting ahead is getting started. The words of Mark Twain. If you know what it's like to be behind and you're looking to get ahead for a change, it's Central Time. Open a new opportunity checking account with Central National Bank that makes finances easy. Account opening is subject to qualifications. Restrictions may apply.
Central National Bank, money for life.
Member FDIC. Money for getting started since 1884.
There's only one place to go for the best digital advice. That's the Kim Komando Show, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. with me, America's digital goddess Kim Komando, on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company that was founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. The experienced professionals at the Trust Company are recruited specifically for their financial, legal, accounting, and business expertise. But they're also your neighbors who, guided by your hopes and dreams, will come to deeply understand your aspirations and goals. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Their only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com. Our guests today are Phil Weltmer. He is a cattle rancher from Smith County, and Scarlett Madinger. She is the manager of communications for the Kansas Livestock Association. It is a trade group made up of cattle producers and all those who are involved in the production of livestock. And they are meeting in Manhattan beginning today through the rest of the week for their annual convention. We've talked a little bit about the decision that led them here. Philip, you're third generation, is that correct? Or is it?
I'm the third generation on our ranch. My son would be the seventh generation in agriculture in Smith County. My grandpa purchased where we're at, and we've grown. But before that, my great-grandfather managed some ranches. And so we've been in agriculture. As the seventh generation would be my son, but third at where we're at, our location.
How old is your son?
He is 19 and he's at K-State. So.
What is he thinking about what's he thinking about with respect to the future of what you just described?
He is all in to come back. And we've known that since he was little. He loves it. He's a animal science and agronomy major, so dual major currently. That's kind of his passion and goal, and he has his own farm ground, and that's what he wants to do. And so we've never made our kids make a decision or you have to come back. We've told them there's an opportunity to come back if so. And so that's kind of the direction he's always been. My middle boy, he likes finance, accounting, that type stuff, and I think that's the direction he is. My daughter, she's the unknown. She likes animals and she thinks she wants to be a vet. So, we've never told our kids they had to come back, but I think we talked about the way of life, how do we pass on?
Sure.
Generationally, how does that look as we try to pass it on down generations, and we have to have those kids willing to come back.
Well, tell your daughter that there's a pretty good vet school here in Manhattan, right? If she gets to that point, I'm sure there's some people that would love to talk to her about that.
I'm sure that is great.
So Philip, tell us, it is a way of life, right? It is more than a job, right? This is something that you were born into, your son was born into, your father was born into. What do you like best about it? What's your most favorite part of being a cattle rancher?
I can make my own schedule. I can attend all my kids' activities, and for the most part, unless there's an outside weather issue or sometimes when harvest comes, and I think that's the hardest thing for outside family members. They've gotten married and their spouses, they just don't understand like, we're going to have a birthday party. Well, we're
Sunday
in harvest.
At 3 o'clock.
We are not coming in the middle of the afternoon. That type of deal.
Right.
There's that disconnect and understanding. It's all hands on deck when it's harvest. It's all hands on deck when we're calving. And we were talking about last winter in January. We calved January, February. We do a lot of synchronized AI. So it's
artificial insemination.
Artificial insemination. So they're going to calve in about an 8-day window. I had 108 calves born in 6.5 days in the midst of 2 blizzards last year.
And
so we had 16
work.
inches of snow, freezing cold weather, and it's hands-on. And we have a hired man, my wife, and myself, and my kids that were every hour we were driving through them. That's 24 hours a day. We had spotlights on pickups. It got so much snow that we ended up putting spotlights on a tractor just so we could get around to make sure they were protected. We have sheds that we got them into. Our losses were minimal. The stress on the employees and myself was a lot. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of headache, and just it got to the point my middle boy said, "Dad, don't you know there's another time of the year we could be calving, like August?" And I'm like, yes, there is, but it doesn't fit our how we've been running our operation, and there's a purpose for everything, of why we do it. But it's I think it's that way of life, or that understanding. Well, yes, we have that freedom that all summer long. My daughter played on a travel basketball team. We were talking about it here out of Manhattan. We were able to go. I'm like, we get her to Manhattan to practice. We go to the games, and because I have that freedom to get away. I don't have a 9-to-5 job. As an owner, I probably could get out of a job, but that part of it. But I make time. I mean, I may work 20 hours the day before so that I can go, but I have that freedom to go away and spend that family time.
How old were you, Phil, when you knew that this was what you were going to do with your life?
Oh, first grade, second grade.
Really young.
I was the elementary school. You cross the railroad tracks in our sale barn, and every Thursday, as soon as it out, I was over there pushing cows in the back, and I was in the ring, and we had a hog finishing facility, and it didn't matter what day I was at a pig sale with Dad, or I was unloading and raising, working them, and that's always been my passion.
And it sounds like your son wants to do the same thing. So my guess would be he had the bug bit him when he was that old too.
Yep.
Fair enough.
I would say at 6 weeks old, he had his first tractor ride, and we said his first word was tractor. So, I think it's been since he could walk.
It just gives you a sense of the ingrained culture in livestock, in farming and ranching in the middle of the country, in Kansas specifically. It's a huge part of our legacy, and I'm glad we had the opportunity to visit with you all today on this. Scarlett Madinger is Director of Communications for the Kansas Livestock Association. Phil Weltmer is a cattle rancher from Smith County. KLA is in Manhattan beginning today for their convention. They have chosen Manhattan on purpose. If you see more cowboy hats, cowboy boots, and big buckles, that's why. They will be eating a lot of beef, would be my guess, right? I mean, you're not going to serve chicken, right?
No, sir.
Poultry. Okay. Thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Tomorrow on our show, we'll get to know Jamie Minton. She's the newest Manhattan City Commissioner. She was appointed last spring to fill a vacancy when another commissioner stepped down. Jamie is an executive with the Meadowlark Hills Senior Living here in town. And on Friday, we'll visit with Carla Hagemeister. She's the executive director of the Flint Hills Bread Basket. The need for basic nutrition for those who may not be able to tell you exactly where their next meal is coming from. Carla will talk about that, what it means for our community as well. On Monday, we'll wrap up our 5 individual one-on-one conversations with Manhattan City Commissioners when Karen McCullough will drop by and have a conversation. Tuesday, we'll be joined by Marcia Roselle. She's the CEO of Visit Manhattan, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, whose job it is to bring groups like the Kansas Livestock Association to town. So Marcia's done her job. KLA is in town. We're delighted you joined us today. My name is Mike Matson. The program is Within Reason.
KS State Bank wants to be your bank. Find the solutions you've been looking for at ksstate.bank. KS State Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.